I remember sitting at a volleyball
game,
and a mutual acquaintance or friend had thought we would need to meet each other.
She
right?
knew, our children went to the same school, and this mutual friend knew that we both were artists. And so she said, you have to meet each other. And so we're in the bleachers, and that's where we met, and the rest is history. Everything changes, and that's part of what our exhibition's about, really. Have changed over time, and how you adjust to these changes.
Yeah, and a lot of the work in the exhibit, I think, was inspired by all those great conversations we had about things we were going through and challenges we were facing, and found that we had lots of similar experiences, a lot of similar ways of looking at things maybe. And so when thinking about doing a collaborative exhibition together, we thought, why don't we try to find the commonalities and work from that? And so the exhibit came out of all those shared experiences, and we're both the same age, and we're both dealing with what does that feel like, and who are we now, and where are we going? And
so we used a lot of photography and mixed media and caustic to talk about things like, getting married, having children, elder care. What does it look like now to be a woman of a certain age, and why do they say that about us? Why do they say a woman of a certain age when they don't say that about men? And so there is a little bit of a connotation towards it being perhaps not positive, and we want to embrace it and say we're so proud of all the things that we've gone through and survived, and we're here to say that we're stronger and more knowledgeable and more understanding, I think, of people and situations than might have been when 20 or 25 or 30. I think that the photo collage mixed media pieces are a really lovely segue or connection between photography and painting. And I felt that using imagery, either past and present photos or integrating past work into photographs, helped to tell a story about what we've gone through over several decades, what it would be like to see through the eyes of a younger me or an older me or a relative or a friend, and try to gain a greater understanding of the people around us, so that we can be more inclusive and accepting of our strengths and weaknesses as well as others.
kind of came away from this whole process with a much greater sense of gratitude about the opportunities that I've been given, and just really for being able to work in this creative way in my life, and to be able to do some of this work. Yeah.
I think too, I remember in university being taught that art is the communication of ideas in visual form. So what is the idea that we want to present in this exhibition? And another thing that I think was sort of instilled in me was, who are you and what is it you want to say? So we had those conversations about what is really important and what is valid, and what connects the two of us, what separates the two of us. And it was just a really lovely opportunity to actually do a collaborative exhibition with Cindy after sharing a space with her for so long.
People might be more familiar with my landscape work, but I felt it was important for me to bring my abstracts to this show, because part of the reason for doing the show was to experiment and do some things that were new, and the abstracts are newer. To me, it starts to speak about sort of inner validation versus outer validation, which is something that we talk about and experience as women and growing older. And so I think that's what's happening in some of those abstracts, but who knows? It could say different things to different people. this large abstract is the biggest piece I've ever done, so yay me. It's quite gestural, which I love, and although it's sort of inspired and rooted in my experience in the landscape, it, of course, is non-referential and very abstract, but I think the fact that it has all that gesture feeling to it speaks to what I experience when I'm in the landscapes. I think that these abstracts are important because they require more of me. They require me to be very in tune with what my own perceptions and my own visual creative bent is, and not so much about what I think other people might be wanting to see from me or expecting, or they're more about being engaged in the process, which I'm really enjoy, because you start each of these pieces and you don't know where they're going to end up. And so you're just responding to what's happening on the canvas. And I really like that aspect of it. And I think it ties into our theme too, because, que sera, sera. We don't know the future. As we get older, we learn more and more to just kind of accept what's happening and, adapt to it and accept things that we can't change if we'd like to. And so I sort of feel like all of that relates somehow to the process of making abstract paintings. My color choices are often about creating a mood and a sense of either emotion or, mostly my feeling about the experience or what I'm looking at. And so a lot of them are blue, green, like nature-inspired colors.
I think all artists will at some point decide on what path they're going to take with their art. Some people will want to have a very consistent body of work over decades. For me, I guess I kept challenging myself to do one thing. Once I got the hang of that, I wanted to challenge myself with something else. And so a good example of that would be my work with portraiture. And I do love drawing. I love drawing details, but I can do that. I know I can do it. And I need to always be serving myself with coming up with new things that I want to get a handle on. So you'll see over time that my work has changed a lot, perhaps more than some other artists might, but it's again part of the intention. So if somebody wants to be super consistent, that's awesome, go for it. But I really feel a need to continually challenge myself. I feel so lucky to be able to paint for a living, and it's really all about who I am and what I want to say, and that changes over time. What I've got here is a number of photo collage mixed media pieces. I spent some time 2 years ago painting famous women that I felt really pushed the women's movement ahead. And in their own right, they were exceptional in whatever it was they were doing in their field. So I spent time painting all of those people individually. I've got those paintings, I have them photographed, and then I thought, what would it look like if I superimposed myself into the painting I did, or into a photograph, and really try to think about what would I feel or see if I were that person. Now, we'll never know because we don't walk in everybody's shoes, but we can try, and we can try to gain a greater understanding of the individual. So here I've got quite a variety of historical people, women, and I'm just trying to see through their eyes. I'm really pushing myself to see and understand other people's way of thinking and their path that they walked on. Some of it's about equality, some of it was just about being groundbreaking. With Mary Cassatt, not a lot of women were given the ability to paint full-time like she did at that time. So this body of work again it was really, really enjoyable because we were manipulating and layering images over images over images. Going in with paint, you'll see that I've done the same image 3 times, but 3 different ways. So what would I feel like if I was looking through Mary Cassatt's eyes on a day that was super colorful? And or what would it look like if she was painting her children in a more calm and gentle manner? So the colors, the marks that I've made in here are all significant with regard to the story that I want to tell to the viewer.
I put these together as a series because I felt that they spoke to my creative journey. At the beginning, when I was starting to think about painting, I had lots of hang-ups about being a fine artist. And I read Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way, and she got me, writing, doing all this writing and morning pages. And so some little pieces of my journal and whatever made their way into some of these pieces. I went back into my photography collection in which I have a large, expansive collection of photos of landscape for my landscape painting reference. And I also went into personal photos that had sort of special significance that stood out over time. I enjoyed working with the wax. We used it to cover some of the images, and I embellished some of the images with mark making and other tools, and also some of them have encaustic paint added to them. So I like the way the wax added to the surface quality and gave these pieces a sense of permanence.
Yeah, for the last several years, I've been really trying to work on being more expressive and less dependent on my rendering skills. So I've been trying to layer drawing and painting strokes over and over and over and over again, almost to show shifts in time and showing different aspects of life. Often when we take a picture, everybody smiles. Well, as soon as the picture's done, then what do you look like? What are you feeling? Where do you have to go afterwards? So there's a whole bunch of different aspects of life and what we experience that often isn't recorded, that could be just as meaningful and beautiful, elegant, without it being, that ideal pose. So this particular piece was actually done just from my memory. I did not have anybody in front of me, and this is family dynamics of my own. So it's before my family started, I'll say crumble, because my father started to get ill, had dementia, and then mom got cancer and dementia. My father died. So this is a memory of the past. So I'm here, I'm running over to give them some coffee, some cookies. I've got the two kids sitting on Grandma and Grandpa's lap, and then my husband over on the far side. And again, there's all these layers being put into, I think that's one thing that I can say that connects my work from the past to the present, is this real enjoyment of layering the paint and having marks become obscured or more defined depending on what I leave and what I cover up. And it's kind of like what we do also as human beings. We put on a facade and we cover up parts of ourselves and we only let other parts show through. So in a way, that's part of my painting process as well. So if you look at some of the still life that I've done, or my rabbits, or other pictures of people, you might see this almost a movement of time happening, and just fragments of it will be shown.
Okay, so this is an installation of cards. Jean and I discovered that we had both saved cards over the years, and
Every single card.
I can't say every single card, but the ones that were meaningful, that came to me and were about something in our relationship, or that I felt said something that I wanted to retain. And I always thought, when I'm a little old lady, a
woman of a certain age,
I'll sit and look through my collection, and I'll see all the different roles I had in life: mother, daughter, sister, colleague, volunteer. These cards represent all those different things, all those different aspects of who we are.
And sometimes life goes like this. Just like the cards are flowing over top of the different things that we've set up here for them to flow over. So it's basically representing a track of time that we both experienced. COVID had an impact on my work. I think that the world became smaller. We were told not to go out. We were told to isolate. So I didn't go downtown to my studio. I stayed at home at my studio, which is a lot smaller. So I worked small. I simplified color. I took color away and just worked monochromatically. And I hadn't done a lot of work with Yupo. I used different types of plastic papers to create collage papers, but not necessarily formal paintings. So, especially with watercolor. So what I did was I mixed random red, yellows, and blues together to mix a beautiful dark. And I just went in with really expressive marks and put paint down and lift paint up, put paint down and lift paint up. I didn't do any drawing beforehand as well. So that was another way to challenge myself with a certain amount of realism. Once I did this several times, I really had a wonderful time trying to come up with different marks, different ways of making textures and marks with the water, the brush, paper towel, whatever was at my disposal. One of our Edmonton models that does a lot of figure drawing and painting, Andrea Warren, has really tried to keep figure drawing alive and has been very generous with posting some of her imagery. So this was done from that. And every time I drew her, I would rotate the paper or start drawing over top. I pretend that there's nothing there each time I draw on top. So I started with pencil, crayon, watercolor, felt pens, and then gesso, white and black gesso. So all these layers just get put on one over top of another to show movement and life and expressing different postures. It's just been really a lovely step forward with my work.
This installation here is called Lifelines. And what I'm trying to do here is just create a sense of community almost between these different vertical forms. So they are quite delicate looking at first glance, but they do have integrity and strength to each piece, and also the verticalness of the sculptures give them sort of a visual strength. They also are about progression and growth, which ties into the theme of our exhibition.
What I would like the viewer to take away is an identification of an image to their own life. What is there that we're talking about that you've experienced, and what does that make you think of in your own life? So really, I really want a dialogue between the viewer and the artwork, and a dialogue that makes them think, makes them question, makes them, perhaps gain a greater understanding of their situation and how perhaps it relates to other people in the community.
Yeah, I would hope that people would see a diverse, nuanced, colorful, interesting body of work, and that this body of work might, as it did for me as I was making it, generate maybe a few questions for them, like I asked myself, what are some of my personal beliefs or maybe even prejudices of a certain age.
And how have they changed over decades? I mean, I'm a much different person than I was when I was 20. And I really like who I am now. And I'm sure you feel the same way. Mm-hmm. So all these life lessons, becoming a woman of a certain age, I think has built a stronger and more rich human being than if we hadn't gone through these things that we've gone through.
and just maybe to encourage people to be curious, ask themselves, am I curious in my relationships with people of a certain age, and can I be more curious?
I really think it's about communicating something that the viewer can identify with. And sometimes all it is a color. Sometimes it's a situation. Somebody sees a painting of a farm and they can appreciate and understand that, their parents grew up on a farm. Here, some of that trickles in because both of us have that in our roots, but there's also a strong sense of family, a strong sense of connection, a strong sense of history and celebrations and losses. And everybody has those at some point in their life. So hopefully everybody will identify and relate to these very human stories.